At this time, we'll call to order the regular meeting of Finance Personnel. This is August 13th, 2024. Amy, roll please.
Alderperson Pere,
Here.
Alderperson Gantz, and Alderperson Quigley are excused. Mayor Boyd
I'm here.
and Alderperson Kundinger.
Here.
Thank you. Item 2, approval of the minutes from July 9th, 2024, regular meeting of the Finance Personnel Committee. I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Pere. Discussion, comments? There are none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 3, public comment upon matters not on the agenda. Comments made during the public comment period shall pertain only to matters under the jurisdiction of the Finance and Personnel Committee. Anyone here in person or virtually have any public comment upon matters not on the agenda? If so, state your name. For the second time, any public comment upon matters not on the agenda? Third and final time, public comment upon matters not on the agenda. Now is your time. Let's move to item 4. Consideration and possible action on a request to purchase CivicClerk agenda and meeting management software with $11,500 to come from unassigned reserves. I will make a motion to approve.
I can second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Kundinger. Any discussion or comments? I don't know if you have issues about unassigned reserves. Do you guys want an explanation? Is Carrie out there?
She is.
Woo. Carrie, you want to just give a brief overview of this? That might be helpful.
Sure. We are proposing that the city would enter into an agreement with CivicClerk for their agenda and meeting management software. We are proposing a very tight timeline to implement the software, but that will come with some cost savings down the road because then we would not be having any overlap with our current system and paying that vendor. So that is why we're proposing to do it now and take some of that money from unassigned reserves to get it started here in 2024.
Okay, so we really have to have this at this time then. So people do know Carrie's obviously running an election today, so she's out there. Questions or comments, issues or concerns with the funding mechanism? And we have a motion in a second, correct? We
Yes.
did, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
All right, that said, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 5, consideration and acceptance of donation from Casa Alba Melanie for the fire department in the amount of $4,161.16.
Nice. Move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Alderperson Pere, seconded by Alderperson Kundinger. Discussion or comments? Reading the memo and description that we have here, this is pretty impressive for the fire EMS. Correct, Chief? He's not in his head. He's in the back there. He can't say anyway. So a big thank you to Casa Alba Melanie for this donation. That said, all those in favor of accepting the donation say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 6, recommendation and possible action to accept $4,271.51 grant from the Brown County Crime Prevention Funding Board for the purchase of 2 traffic radar speed boards and mounting brackets.
Only if I know where they are. I was just going to say, I don't want it.
I'll make a motion to approve and we'll get discussion.
I'll second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Kundinger. I just saw Officer Leiterman out there. Community police officers submitted this, obviously, so it's a good thing. Adding 2 more of these boards that they can react to citizen complaints, of which we do get some. Now we get a lot, actually. So it's a good thing. So thanks to the funding board, Brown County Crime Prevention, for this donation. That said, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Item 7, recommendation and possible action to contract with Carfax for police and accident report publication and vehicle records searches. Before we move on, is the chief, are you out there? Oh, not that chief, the other chief. Police chief.
No, I don't think so.
He's not out there. Okay. Well, it's in the memo. So this is something that is beneficial for police. And then it says that we also generate revenue from this as well. If we read the memo accurately. Larry?
Correct. He's just recommending that you could do a nominal fee of $5 that he's estimating would then bring in between $500 and $1,000 a year in revenue for people making requests for the reports.
So would be their recommendation to do the nominal fee in addition to this. Questions or comments? Sounds like it's used quite successfully elsewhere. I would make a motion to accept the recommendation of Carfax with the proposed fee of $5.
I'll second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Cuniger. Additional discussion or comments? All right, that said, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item A, consideration and possible action on a revised purchase, sale, and development agreement terms with FBS Investment Group for an expanded manufacturing facility at 2257 American Boulevard, WD 1371. Dan?
All right.
All right.
Throw it up on the screen here for you. So you last saw this in February of this past year, revised terms. And actually, this is about the third or fourth times that you've seen revised terms on this project since 2020. They originally came forward right before COVID and tried to move things along. It didn't happen in 2020. 2021 just wasn't able to move forward. In 2022 and 2023, they were elected to move forward, but ultimately had large capital costs that they had to take on for their expanded facilities. And they actually have a leased facility in Ashwaubenon. Well, 2024, they came to move this project forward, and the ownership is looking to be reconfigured. And as a result, that kind of came into some additional concerns and kind of delayed the project here at this point. So one owner buying out the other owner and stuff like that. So all that being said is the Community and Economic Development Consultant, Quaison Shaw, and I went out and met with them to kind of see where they're at to kind of push this project along and kind of get this finalized going, or return the property to the city so that we could develop it with somebody else. Ultimately, they want to develop it. We want to help our existing businesses continue to grow, but we also don't want to see a property languish. So we met with them. Part of the revised terms that you saw previously, site plan hasn't changed since you saw it last February. Been approved by the staff, but previously they were going to return actually and pay for the property, meaning the site assembly grant would be returned to us, and so they would buy the property outright for $139,000. However, that kind of really removes us from the equation then at that point, because we don't have any clawbacks. So with that, we wanted to see if we could help them out with that situation. With the ownership transition, they need to clear that $139,000 because they've already taken it out. They planned for it, and so they need to return that grant to us. They would then like to, in exchange, enter into a pay-go agreement with us, as well as a cash grant agreement for that same similar amount, $139,000, after they complete the project. So a lot of this is kind of corporate financing and a lot of kind of bookkeeping on their end. But in short, we'd be looking at a cash grant as well as a pay-go. The cash grant would be equal to the land that they would be buying us. It would just happen. They would give it to us and we'd give it right back to them upon closure of the project. It just has to happen that way for accounting purposes. And then a pay-go agreement about $205,000 at a 90-10 ratio until the TID closes. What that amounts to from a net present value is about 15 to 16%. It's where we've been at with our last three development agreements with Smet and one other on the east side. And then also Marilux was a little higher, but that was kind of a one-off kind of large project. But we've been in the 15, 16 recently. Walter was in that same camp on the north side of on the West Business Park. So we've all been in that same camp recently. So with that, we'd like to get this project moving forward, and for them, that kicks off with finalizing this development agreement and signing it, and then transitioning that check to us. So they have the check written, waiting to give it to us, so they're waiting. So with that, staff's recommending approval of terms that you see in your packet, and I do have them outlined here if you want to go through any of them.
Thank you. I think this was brought up before. How long do these term sheets live? Did you say 2 or 3 years?
Well, a term sheet can live as long as we want it to live before we finalize a development agreement. But because of how many sort of hurdles that have happened every year in their process, we've sort of been encouraging them to kind of come back to the table every year with a revised term sheet. But at some point, either they have to build or we're going to take it back,
right,
because we want to develop it.
Okay,
so.
Good. And I do like that we're sticking with the businesses that are there. I'd make a motion to approve the new proposed term sheet.
Oh, second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Cuniger. Did he say something? I didn't hear him say anything.
No, we're just like, you want it? What, like?
Oh my goodness, you two. You could have
Sorry,
sat closer.
Pere.
You could have
Yeah.
sat closer. Any questions or comments? All right, seeing there are none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 9, review and discussion of the 2023 Annual Tax Increment District TID summaries. Dan.
Unlike previous years, I've given this presentation. It's about a 45-minute to an hour, but to your benefit, I will not be giving that presentation. I will do the hierarchy overview of just what's happened, and then I will be available for questions. And I've even limited myself by not putting in all those slides.
P-Rock's disappointed. I can tell.
I think Larry's disappointed.
So I'm just going to go through an overview. We've seen some tremendous growth in our TIDs recently, to the fact that we are inching closer and closer to our 12% threshold limit that we have listed to us by the state. But as you can tell on the graph, the majority of that growth is primarily located in one tax increment district, number 12. So we've had a ton of growth in TID district number 12. And a lot of that's around Green Bay Packaging, the Amerilux, or not Amerilux, sorry, Infinity Machine. Bayside Machine would be in that example. You also have the big Georgia Pacific warehouse. And then also Garrity's Glen South subdivision and Waterview Heights 5th edition as well. Those were originally included, but so there is some benefit that's happening there. So you're seeing a tremendous growth, but all of the TIDs are seeing growth. Some of that is due to property appreciation, but a lot of it is due to actual growth in our TIDs. And you'll start to see TID number 17 start to grow just with the Amerilux project and a couple others. TID number 10 with Valley Cabinet and Bellmark expansions, you'll see those grow as well. So what does that look like from a year-to-year basis? Ton of information on this one. Don't worry about it. Really what it comes down to is over the past year, we saw a $50 million growth in our TIDs. So that's $50 million, although last year was $150 million. But again, that was because of Green Bay Packaging and Georgia Pacific sort of building all and then coming online in 2023. Keep in mind, or 2022, keep in mind this is 2023 data, not 2024 data. So this is the end of year 2023. So important points to note here, though, are we have a total increment growth of $344 million. Previously, before we closed TID 6, it was below that. So we closed TID 6, took almost 200 million, or sorry, 150 million off of our increment, and then a year and a half later, we added it right back in with all of our development. So that being said, is we're coming close to our 12% threshold. Last year we were at 9.06. This year we're at 9.6. And why are we still staying afloat? Is because our overall equalized value growth is also happening. So when I say that 12% threshold, it means we're allowed to have 12% of our equalized value attributed to TID increment. You can't have any more than that. And if you do, you can't create any more TIDs. You can't add to TIDs. You can't do any of that. So on the chart, the top chart you see there, the item or the top line is our equalized value growth over time, and that's representative on the right side of the chart. And our TID increment growth is on the left side of the chart and in the lower line. So it's two different graphs on one chart, but you can see the trend line is very similar. The only difference is you see a dip from 21 to 22, and that's because we closed TID 5 and TID 6 during that time. But as you can tell, in a very short amount of time, we recouped all that back with development. And then you can see our 12% test over time, and we are coming close, dangerously close to that 12% threshold. So if our equalized value doesn't continue to go up as it is, but our TID values continue to go and grow, we'll be coming closer and closer to that 12%. Where that will impact us is Southern Bridge, future Southern Bridge corridor on the east side. As we start to look at future growth there, that's where we'll potentially have some growing pains. Overall, you see in the packet there the impact of, as we do development projects, the challenges that we continue to run into. I did just include the tax rate comparison over the past 10 years. That's in your packet. It kind of relays through almost every development agreement here that we talk about. And then I just also included our existing debt in TIDs that we have right now. We have about just under $40 million worth of outstanding debt in our TIDs. That number is expected to extremely grow with Southern Bridge because we're funding as much of that project as we can with TIDs and also with Shopko. So those two redevelopment projects will grow our existing borrowing, but it is typically tied to projects. So that's the majority of that. So, and then any individual TID questions I'm available for.
This is really good. It really is good when we see this stuff. I really like that. Did you guys have any questions? I mean, we actually saw the individual TIDs. I like that first graph a lot with the squiggly lines. That's cool. I don't know how to do that. So we're healthy, is really what we're trying to say.
Yeah.
By and large, we're in a good place. So there's no TID underwater, huh?
No, I mean, by underwater, you mean our overall financing.
Underdeveloped.
Right.
It's different than what I would say is versus just had a negative growth. Our funding oftentimes outpaces in the first few years than it does in the back end. So all of our new TIDs, TID 14, 15, 16, 17, those are all behind schedule, or not behind schedule, but in the red, but that's to be expected. And they'll start to see that growth over time.
Are you guys being approached by businesses that want to add into the business parks and these TIDs?
We went out today and met with 2 individuals who are looking at growth,
How
and
about
it's really because the Southern Bridge is a key component, but we're ideally situated right now to have our employers capture a good market base from the valley as well as from Brown County. So their employment base can be from either location. So we've been really good. Our highly sought after school districts make people want to continue to be here, and continually, not to pat our own back here, but continue to work with the same developers because they keep coming back. So
Because
yep.
they like the experience.
Yep.
Yeah, and that
So-
I hear that as well too, and that's compliments to you guys. Larry,
You may have mentioned this, and I kind of tuned you out, but no, I'm just kidding. When is the next TID expected to close?
TID 8 is expected, I did not say that, it's in the packet, but TID 8 is expected to close by 2027.
Okay. And what's the value of TID 8?
TID 8 is right here. Current value base, it has an increment value of 21 million right now. And that one continues to go up and down. We had a lot of prior year corrections that were in there. That's been a bit of a nightmare. But we're expected to kind of pull that back. Now, Pam and I will be meeting with Justin at Baird to go through, can we escrow as much as we can in advance? Because we do want to keep that one open for 1 year longer for affordable housing purposes. But the longer we wait, the longer the mill rate drops, the less that amount becomes. So Pam and I will want to see if we can close that one out sooner, as soon as possible. If we can escrow funds for our remaining debt, we have about 1.6 million in remaining debt in TID 8. And if we can escrow that, close it out, extend it for 1 more year, and then we can return that back to the tax rolls and get that off of our 12%.
And the reason I bring that up is that when he talks about the 12%, you have to realize that you also have TIDs that'll be going offline as you continue to progress over time.
so then we should be
And
under.
then those values go offline.
Yeah.
And
The next one after 2027 is until 2035, which is TID 11 and 12 will be 2035. TID 10 is like 2034, but likely have an extension.
And even TID 11, if you got pushed in other areas, you may choose to close it early, and because they're going to probably be in a position to do that. So there will be ways to deal with that. And right now, I think it's about 1% for every 33 million or so, if I
Somewhere
remember
around
right, something like that. So you've got space and time. I think that I don't think you'll hit your 12% right away unless something weird happens.
Well, you'll add 35 million right with Amerilux right off the bat, and so that right there will account for another % jump. And then if we continue to add to our southwest neighborhood, if we add that to TID 12, that'll be a bit of a challenge. So we'll have to kind of balance back and forth. Do we take land out of a TID to bring that land in so that we can develop that land over time as well? So those are all things that we'll be discussing as we continue to make our annual incremental path forward.
So we don't add these numbers in until we get the increments from the finished product. So Valley Cabinet's not done yet, obviously.
Yep.
That'll get added in.
That'll be added in 2 years after they finish. So once they finish, they will then have 1 year of completion, and then we'll receive. So you have a build year, a value year, and a revenue year. So the revenue lags 1 year, the value lags 1 year, and the revenue lags 2 years.
Okay, great, thanks.
And then you add in the increased value of additional net new construction, plus the additional value of increased values to offset as well. So it all fits together.
So the new manufacturing assessed numbers, that helps as well too, correct? Because the state, didn't they change the numbers on these things?
So in your packet, you saw that every TID that had a reduction in personal property has now been included. So all the base values were reduced if they had personal property included when they were created. That being said, is if they were created, we built some buildings, we had some buildings come in, and then they added personal property like we had with Humana and United Health Group. Those values dipped a little bit because we had value added after the district, but then that's all wiped out. So,
Okay.
so the only ones that mattered or that were taken out of the base value recalculation were the ones that had personal property when it was created.
Okay. Larry?
Just one last comment. One thing that, again, you may have to, if you hit close to your 12% threshold and you don't want to be closing certain TIDs or whatever, one of the things to keep in mind is the Southern Bridge corridor, a lot of that property is going to be so valuable for development, you don't need to TID it. It doesn't hurt if it sets a year or two, because as it sets and you see development occurring, it'll become even more valuable. There'll be more pressure that people will want to build on it, whether they're getting TID incentives or not. So that's another way to deal with it, is you take your really valuable places that you know people want to build no matter what, and don't put it in a TID. They don't need incentives. They can just build.
Don't they just wait then until,
Unless they can make enough profit from.
and they
going to
recognize that's
build it.
much better
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
okay, all right, just to do it. Okay.
It's the infrastructure that comes down to that area. Where it'll come in play is if we have to extend infrastructure that is beyond what that developer, potential landowner is asking for, because we want to upsize pipes. We can't really force them to have that amount. So that's the only place it'll come in play, is if we have to do some massive upsizing to account for the whole area. But that's something that we'd have to do either internally with general obligation or with TID. But you may not have to with TID.
This will be a fun 6-7 years, huh? Yeah. Questions, comments? Anyone else? Thanks, Dan. Thank you. Very well done. Item, what are you on, 10 here? Is that what we're on? 10. Consideration and possible action on a proposed development agreement terms with Preserve Development Apartments LLC for an 86-unit multifamily and 15-unit townhome development located on the north side of Employers Boulevard, WD 364D5022, WD 364D502, and a portion of WDD 0031. Dan?
Yes, so this is the first step in a lot of steps to make a project like this happen. So I'll kind of go through it, but I'll put the nice picture on the screen for everyone to kind of take a look at. But the area that we're talking about is the former Humana campus. The bungalows preserved is to the south. It's kind of off the screen here. That's those small single-family homes, kind of individual condo type units with the clubhouse. This is the multifamily portion of it that was talked about in the comprehensive plan several years ago. What you're seeing here is a complete phased project, I guess you would say, of this initial component. There is opportunity for more development, but this is kind of the first three phases. But what we're talking about here is today's phase one. So you see three large buildings on that screen plus 3 townhome buildings, and then you also see the areas that are defined as wetlands. But the areas in question here are what we're talking about for future roadway improvements, as well as future phases. So what we're talking about today is going to be building what's labeled as building 2, but it's building 1 that we're talking about, phase 1. And then the townhomes. It's a mixed-use project building, or mixed owner-occupied building, meaning it's a combination of owner-occupied units and rental income units, kind of a hybrid approach. And what that allows you to do, it allows you to sort of leverage private dollars that are outside the ownership group's stake when it comes to maintenance, as well as, again, clubhouse and other components that would be involved in this. So staff met with the developer to kind of walk through the project and kind of discuss overall values and how we can add value on a current rate and phase it over time. So what we'll be talking about tonight is that first building plus the 3 townhomes. So as I go through, oh, look at that, I put animations on there. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And then obviously there is opportunity for future phases up in some other areas. Now you'll notice that there's a sea of parking that's also on this site that has a potential to transition. As we've transitioned away from as much office as we've had in the past, that parking isn't as widely utilized. Now that the new owners of that Humana campus site will be evaluating just how much of that to take up to remove for future development. And so they'll be working through that process. So as I go through, so again, back to phase 1, and I put in your packet just the example building plans that kind of showed what that looks like. Very kind of large footprint of a building with underground parking, as well as the building has internal components that are more of an atrium type approach versus strict hallways. And the first 2 floors with public amenities, and then also the 3rd floor being condos, units with lofts and terraces. And I did put all the floor plans in there, but I'm not going to sit through it. I don't need to describe those. You can see them. So the project, as you defined it by the parcel description, is a combination of parcels that have to be reconfigured through a CSM. It is a combination of parcels that do straddle a TID boundary. So in order for this to work, it'll have to be a TID 15 amendment. So the first and second floor to combine are 58 units of apartments. Now I call them market rate units because they're technically not complying with any affordability funding programs right now, but they actually do meet WIDA income 80% threshold limits. So they are voluntarily meeting the 80% threshold, even though they're not being required to. That being said, they may apply for WIDA funding in the future, and you'll see some of that notion as we get further along. The third floor is 28 market rate condominium units, underground parking, and then 3 townhome buildings with 5 units each. I did include a full kind of detailed analysis, which includes the overall breakdown of cost per unit. I did include the overall potential averaging condo sales pricing, as well as townhome sale pricing. That went all into our pro forma. I can go through those, and if you have any questions on those. Here's all of our assumptions. It's in your packet. I'm not going to go through them, but throughout this process, we detailed out minimum annual payments for any incentive requests that they'd be asking, and that's what's on to the left, as well as part of their incentive ask requires a municipal revenue obligation. So I'll kind of walk through those as we go, but really the but-for test comes into play as we did a full analysis of their pro forma for over a 10-year period with moderate assumptions. And we then evaluated that pro forma based off of if it has an incentive and if it doesn't have an incentive. And so the kind of primary key factors that we use when we do a market approach to that is we look at internal rate of return, return on equity, and return on cost, with a primary heavily weight on internal rate of return. Internal rate of return for a project of this nature, as we discussed when we went through Shopco and others, is going to be anywhere between 14 to 18% over a 10-year period, and that includes an assumed sale. And so in this case, with the incentive, they're actually in the 12.5% internal rate of return range upon sale of a project. Again, they would be only selling 2 floors of it because the top floor of it would be condoed, and so they'd only be selling a certain portion of the basement. So there's a lot of stuff that gets in play, but from our purpose, we only look at it from an analysis standpoint. Our stress test is when we take away the incentive away and then swap out those incentives with either more equity or more borrowing. And that resulted in a 7% internal rate of return. So that it does meet the definition of but-for requirement. So but-for. So the developer is proposing a $2.5 million incentive broken out 2 different ways, one of which would be in the camp of $500,000 upfront cash grant upon completion of the project, and then a $2 million MRO, municipal revenue obligation, moving forward for the life of the TID at a certain % interest. The reason why is the developer would be maxing out its loan to value, and so therefore they will have to take out a secondary loan backed by the municipal revenue obligation, which will allow the bank to exceed the typical 70% loan to value. So timelines, you see them in the packet. Site plan, you see that component. You see we're required a certified survey map, an assessed value, certain thresholds that you see there that are broken out by this component and by this packet here. We are also then taking a look at parking obligations that they would have to meet from an obligation standpoint. They would have to secure that municipal revenue obligation backed mortgage. They would have to look at their sidewalks and trails and construct trails per their concept plan, because that will be attached as an exhibit, that are located on private property. Anything in the right-of-way, we are proposing that the city construct similar to any of our other business park areas. And then they would also have to do a water infrastructure analysis. Several years ago, the water line was relayed in that area across private property, right where the building now has to sit, the second building. So they will have a water relocation cost that will have to be taken on. But as part of this one, we would like them to investigate that now so that we're aware of it by the time phase 2 comes. Our obligations come in the form of a street and stormwater infrastructure. They originally asked for the incentive to also cover street and stormwater infrastructure, meaning their incentive request would be in the $4 million range. But to help with our project to reduce the cost of borrowing against the TID, as well as to reduce their cost, we said we would build the infrastructure as part of our incentive. It's the overall end game is the same. It's just the city would take it on and they wouldn't be charged taxes on a larger grant. We must amend TID number 15 And then our incentives are outlined below, which is a project cost reimbursement grant of the 500,000, a pay-go of 200,000. And then because we are in a revenue generating project, we are also including the look back provision, just like we did with Shopko, with the one caveat that if they do decide to elect to enter into WIDA funding for affordable housing purposes, that we would remove the look back provision, meaning WIDA's incentivizing them to lock in affordability rates per their threshold. And if they do that, then that's the incentive to remove that look back provision. And that look back provision is based off of a internal rate of return of 20%, which is very similar to Shopko. So all that being said, it's a lot to go through. I can discuss any of those things in greater detail, any of the assumptions, any of the project, and available for questions.
Say hypothetically they apply for WIDA, get it or whatever. We saw the apartment rental prices, which weren't low, obviously. That would help that considerably.
Those meet WIDA limits. So WIDA 70-10 program, which is a more or less an adjustable rate mortgage for
those meet WIDA.
Those meet WIDA limits for 80% threshold. Again, as I mentioned before, we have to sort of get past the idea that the definition of affordable is the same to everybody. It's not.
Sure.
It's different. But if you do the math backwards of somebody who's making a area median income, a household of 68,000 a year, take 30% of that and divide that by 12. That's what the that's what the 100 is. And then so you take 80% back from that, and then 60, 50, 40. So that's the math that you do backwards to figure that out.
Fair enough. Larry?
Just a quick question. Can you remind me, is the WIDA limits, is it based on each individual area, community, or is it a statewide? Or
area median income or county median income. So it takes your county median, and then so every county has a based off of family household size, what that threshold is. And so in the case of some of the WIDA programs, we don't qualify for a lot of WIDA programs because of our communities considered advantaged. So, but WIDA, if they start to look at more smaller urban programs, one of which available is to the developers now, which is again the 710 program, but others may be available in the future. So if they do elect to enter into a agreement with WIDA to lock in WIDA rates for a certain period of time, that's when we take that look back provision out. And I've never seen a WIDA program be less than 10 years anyways. So.
And then, I guess, just to kind of qualify it from the thing that the league gave today for information in that meeting, was they identified, and I think this is based on the latest income was 2022, I don't think it was 2023, out of the 604, 605 villages and cities in the state, not towns, De Pere has the 17th highest per capita income in the state.
Highest.
Out of all the cities and villages in the state. Now, the towns tend to be wealthier in around urban areas on a per capita basis, but just so it gives you kind of a feel when you're talking about rental rates and WIDA, what's it based on, our incomes here are a bit higher, and so the WIDA limits are a bit higher, to give you that sense.
That's very good. Very informative.
And they do have also a representative online tonight to more answer technical questions about the project.
Anyone have any technical questions about the project? No, I really do not. I just had other questions on this, but no, I do not. TID, is this a TID?
It would be TID 15.
Okay. And then the percent?
In the packet, what did I have in the packet?
I did read the packet for the record. I know you keep referencing it, but there's so much information in the packet.
I don't think I included that one on here, but it's
pretty similar to all the others, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
what
it's
you're gonna say.
actually I have it here. If you just give me a second. I'm seeing if somebody online texted me what the percent was, but it's pretty close to our normal percentage. I think it's in the, if you look at overall percent to assessed value, it's going to be in the 14 to 16%, just like we talked about previously.
Okay, so pretty.
If you look at the overall amount that it's contributing when you take borrowing into consideration and the overall revenue generated, it's going to use up a significant amount, but we are building infrastructure at a significant cost and a large cul-de-sac. So the majority of the income generated on this project will be used for this project. Once that project is done, all that infrastructure is there, you now have 2 more spots for future buildings, which will then add a significant amount of revenue without having such a large infrastructure cost. So future phases will have a larger benefit.
Very good. Yeah, I have no questions here, but obviously we appreciate the risks that these developers take putting these things together. We understand that and we appreciate that. That said, I'd make a motion to approve the proposed development agreement terms.
I'll second. I
Motion
do
by
have a
me, seconded by
question.
Alderperson Cuniger, and I know there's someone out there, but again, pass that on that this is the first step and got a ways to go, but this is a good start. So we appreciate you. All right, that said, all those in favor, say aye.
Amy,
Oh.
Alderperson Cuniger had a question.
Sometimes I wonder. I just was curious about,
Now she talks.
I know that, there's lots of moving pieces, but hypothetically, when could a shovel go into the ground? What is realistic timing for a project like this to start?
Well, we have it on here, and really what it comes down to us, the most important is the full value date, because that really starts our clock for how many years. So we have full value assessed by January 1st, 2027. You're looking at probably summer of next year by the time we get our road structure. We have to design the road because that road will then set grades, that will be where the building sits. So the faster we design the road, or at least get preliminarily designed the road, the faster the developer can place the building per plan, and then they can move forward from there. So
And
I
then-
wrote it in the capital sheets today for this infrastructure.
Oh, wow.
And then my second question revolves around future development, because it's assuming those, like the Humana property is going to stay as is, but that's subject to change as well, right? And that the parking lots and all would be in place. Is this development right now contained just to the colored square footage? Is that the land only that it pertains to, or is it potentially like other properties in that area could be incorporated into this as
So
well?
the primary developer at this point purchased all of the subject property of the Humana campus, which included our former leased ball field and everything else.
Okay.
As investors come in, they will take on smaller portions and chunks, but in this case, the area that you're looking at, again, it's not shown on here, but it's roughly kind of what you're seeing here. The parcel line is actually right here. If you can follow my mouse, is right here. And this is in TID 15. This is out of TID 15. So we'll actually end up having to move a parcel line somewhere over here and then modify the TID 15 boundary to account for that. At that time, we'll also do any TID amendments for Southern Bridge to update cost and borrowing and stuff like that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? And did we vote? Okay.
I don't
Sorry about
know
that.
No, you did not
We
vote.
didn't vote.
Oh, we didn't vote?
I'm
Moved
sorry,
and
We have the
seconded.
motions and stuff.
We have a motion.
Yeah, you caught me in time before the vote. Apologies. That said, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right. Let's move to item 11. Consideration and possible action on consultant agreement with Partners Engineering and Science, Inc. for ADA Facilities Audit Services. This is Larry.
Can we say something?
It's up to you. Well, just say something. You're on here.
Again, the council previously authorized the city to have $65,000 from the ARPA funding to complete the ADA facilities audit based on the 2010 federal law on ADA requirements for buildings and facilities. And so we've had it on our list of things to do for years. It hasn't been done. And so now our intent is to get it completed. We went through and did a search of firms in the general state, going into Northern Illinois that would complete this type of work. There were 5, and we sent requests for proposals to all 5 firms. Only 2 responded. Another one did respond, had asked some questions, and just said they were not going to submit a proposal based on whatever they had internally. And so we have the 2 proposals before you. Again, we budgeted $65,000. The proposals came in at $76,175 and $78,850. We're recommending going with the Partners
Engineering and Science.
for the $76,175. And then the finance director has indicated that we do have sufficient funds left over from ARPA projects that were already approved and completed to make up the balance of the $11,175. So we'd ask for the council then to authorize the spending of an additional $11,175 of ARPA funding in addition to what was originally budgeted, the $65,000, to complete the audit yet this calendar year.
Very good. Questions, comments? I'll make a motion, just to move it on if you do. I'll make a motion to approve the agreement with Partners Engineering and Science, Inc. For the whatever that amount was.
76.
$76,175, correct?
Yep, with the,
And then with the additional $11,175 above the $65,000 as part of the ARPA funds that are left over.
Yep.
How was
Second.
that?
Somewhere around there.
Second. Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson P-Rock. Additional questions or comments? It will be good to get this done. That said, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 12, staff report on the Green Bay area room tax. Pam, I think you're going to come up. Yes, yeah, I know you're edging, but yeah, you can come on up. And I know Alderperson Hanson brought this forward, and if he has any questions, obviously you can ask. I don't know if you want to go over there. You can kind of go where you want, because you're not going to stay back there. So why don't you just come up over there or something? Right, fair enough. You can say what he wants. All right. Do you want him to start first to explain why he was doing this, or you want to go in? Which way do you want to do it, Alderperson Hanson? This is your request.
I'll kick it off.
Okay.
So I thought I'd bring this forward because we haven't had a discussion in quite a few years about the room tax. I know a lot of it was going to the Expo Center, which is now finished construction. So I thought it would be a good time to get an update on kind of where things stand. As our finance director has laid out in her memo, even though the Expo Center is done, we're still going to be having to pay off the bonding for it until 2054. So I guess the only couple questions I would have after reading this memo would be the 4% that is distributed or dispersed back to the municipalities. Does that just go into our general fund, or kind of where exactly is that allocated? And then the KI and Resch Center bonding or debt service is going to be completed in 2029. Wondering the funds in that no longer have to go towards the debt servicing for those two projects. Will that be coming back to the city?
So I'll start with the 4% is divvied up amongst the municipalities, then out to everybody that's within the room tax commission. So Green Bay and Ashwaubenon get a little extra for the maintenance of their facilities, and then everything else is distributed equally based on, I believe, what is collected by the municipalities. So that is currently just a revenue line within our general fund budget. So that is where that is showing up currently, and it's offsetting other expenses within the general fund. As far as when the Resch and the KI1 bonds are paid off in 2029, currently the excess is set per the waterfall here that it'll go to the CVB, which is Discover Green Bay. So once all the bond payments are made for the four groups, the excess is going to go towards their new building.
And Discover Green Bay really quickly gets how much upfront? A percent? We didn't.
Out of the 10%, they get 2%
2%
up front.
Just so everyone's aware of that. That's what
Yeah,
Discover
it's a
Green
large
Bay gets.
portion of what their overall budget is. So annually, Brad Toll will come and do his presentation of what their budget is and what they do for the area, bringing the different events into these locations, the Expo and the Resch and the KI, and trying to get these groups to stay here and spend money here. And I mean, they were a large part of bringing this draft coming up too.
And I do think they also advertise De Pere as well. Any municipality that participates in this, correct?
Yes.
They're included in the publications that go out? Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead. Alderperson Hanson?
No, I covered it now. Oh, so the the additional money that's going to be paying the bonding that they did for their visitor center.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, ultimately, once they have collected all of their funds as well and paid that off, there is a potential that additional funds will come to the municipality. But at this point, I don't even know how far out that is. So once we get closer, we'll have a better idea. We'll discuss it again. Annually, we do have Baird and Associated Trust come in and do a presentation for the Room Tax Commission, just to talk about, again, where we're at with these bonds, how the room tax is looking overall, and making sure that we're going to meet these debt payments. There is a potential on some of those debt charts that were above this. Some of these could end up being called. Am I anticipating that we're going to do that? No, but there is call options on some of these. So if at any point they do have more money, there's potential that we could do something there too.
So is there any money currently going to the visitor center for the Discover Green Bay? Because I didn't see
Only
that
the
in here.
2% off the top.
okay.
That there's nothing, there's currently no excess. I believe, in fact, that the amount for the expo is still being supplemented with sales tax. I don't believe that the room tax is covering that debt payment 100%.
Okay. And then also, Pam, I had a constituent a couple years ago who thought De Pere's room tax was high, but it is 10% for everybody, right?
For this whole area, yes. So all the municipalities that I listed in that memo are part of the Green Bay Room Tax Commission, and they all charge the 10%.
So again, so people that are watching this, not every municipality participates in this. It's in here, but I'm back online.
You want me to read
again.
it quick?
Yeah, why don't you read the municipalities?
Alloway, Ashwaubenon, Howard, De Pere, Green Bay, Bellevue, and Swamico.
And I'm just curious, so the money that comes back to the city of De Pere, about what do we get every year? I hate to press, and I could ask that ahead of time, so I really apologize. Because I
Don't know
love
that
that
off the top of my
beautiful
head,
chart.
but I will look it up here quick.
Okay. Was that going to be one of your questions?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Thank you, thank you.
At least I know it's going to the general fund now. So.
Yes, yep. And there's money coming back as
Yeah.
well, which is also good too.
Yep.
Be like $500. $497.63.
The 2024 budget was $14,000.
Okay.
It's not a lot. In 2023, we had 14,221.
Okay. But it is something,
Right.
so that's encouraging.
That's all I got.
Any questions or comments? By the way, it is very informative. It is good to know this stuff, and so we understand where it goes. We do get something out of it. There are benefits to it, but yeah, it's important to know that.
And we're, really trying to be a team player, helping out the county too with some of these big projects, which do benefit De Pere and the whole region. so.
True, very true. Thank you. And the relationship we have is quite good as well too. So, any comments from you? Just nothing. You said you liked the chart a lot when you saw it. Oh. He did like the chart a lot, by the way.
I did not create it. So.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you very much.
Yep.
And this was very good. All right, and thank you very much as well, Pam. Where am I going next? 13. Consideration and possible action on the City of De Pere investment and cash detail. June 2024. I'd make a motion to place this on file.
I'll second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Cuniger. Any discussion, comments, any anomalies? Pretty straightforward. Okay. That said, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 14, future agenda items. Does anyone have anything? Seems not. Item 15, I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion by me, seconded by Alderperson Cuniger. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We're officially adjourned. Thank you, everybody.